then I will build Immortals along with the Oracle Rush. And then with the Terran, I will do the Templar. Actually, with the Zergs, I'll also throw in some Templars in there. And so I normally build the pylon early on so I can get those buildings going, the Gateway, Cybernautic, and then the Stargate afterwards for the Oracle Rush. I'll save resources or minerals, right? So I won't do the Vespine gas structure just yet. I'll do that after the Gateway usually, like just now, right? And then sometimes I'll build it right after the first Vespine structure, and then given once I have enough for another Vespine structure. Other times I'll wait for the Cybernautic. It just depends on the strategy. And so right before the gateway structure gets built, I'll send a worker and then build the Cybernautic structure. Um, and so I've explored with other approaches to have the Oracle be trained. Which approach is trains the Oracle fastest, and this is the fastest that I've come up with. And so the Cybernautics structure is just got built. The Stargate afterwards. Right after the Stargate gets built, I'll train an Oracle on. Sometimes, rarely, but I'll forget the food up there, right? The out of 23. So it's important to build another pylon so that there isn't that delay. And I went ahead and built another pylon just because when I'm moving the Oracle to take down the workers from the opponent's base, I don't have time to go back to my base and build another pylon. So that kind of takes care of that. It gives me much more extra time. So there's the Oracle being trained. And I normally will build another Oracle, right, after this one. Sometimes I go as much as 4 Oracles. The reason being is that sometimes the opponent will have a turret or something that's like anti-craft structure, right? Or a cannon, and 3 Oracles take care of cannon. Once the cannon is taken out, the workers are susceptible to the Oracle ray. But oftentimes they don't have a structure, an anti-air structure, and then just take out the workers if that's the case with the first Oracle. So you can see the opponent has their workers kind of going away from the bases. Usually they're not aware of that. Usually several workers are taken out before the opponent is able to catch on what's happening, right? And then I build my second base. I used to build my base shortly after the first 2 units, right? But then oftentimes what has happened is that there's could be a rush from the opponents, like circlings, right? So I found that building enough units like stalkers and sentries to defend the base in case I get rushed uh, it yields a much more higher win rate. And then I build my second base after I have sufficient army or small army to defend, right? Usually 5 or 6 consisting of stalkers, sentry. So one thing about this particular match is that the opponents seem to be very aware of the Oracle Rush, right? He had turrets, right? As you can see, the oracles were being hit. He had a void ray. This is extremely rare. Most opponents in most patches, they're they're, they're catched off guard. Um, yeah, so I always make sure also that the second base and first base are building workers for the second base to be filled with the 16 out of 16 max workers. I'll use the that energy booster to have the workers build at a much faster rate, and then I'll use the oracle again. Sometimes the opponent is not ready for a second rush of oracle, like right here. And I'll even go as far as do a third oracle rush right after the first two. So there was the Templar structure, right? Because I know that the opponent has is Terran, right? And they're gonna likely build Marines, and the Templars are really good against Marines, but also other air like other units, like the carrier, when they're all clumped together. And so sometimes it's necessary to build cannons along the bases for protection in case there is an opponent wanting to drop units, not from the main entry, but from the non-ramp. I think that's what it's called, the non-ramp path. And so there I am building pylons around the base, and then the cannons afterwards. And so I do the same thing for the second base. There's the first cannon for the second base. There's another cannon. And so another thing with the oracles, I'll use them for scouting. Sometimes the opponent will build a third or their expansions on places that you normally wouldn't find them, right? Like sometimes even close to your bases, like one of the more adjacent mineral places that's close to your bases. And so since I'm building a lot of stalkers, I'm training the ability of blink, so they can be more effective against aircraft like carriers or void rays. So there's the first Templar. Usually I'll go for about average about five. I think in this game though, I think I went more than that, just because I knew the opponent was gonna go carriers. Yeah, at this point, the sentry is not as effective. That unit is only good at the beginning. Um, at least for me in this strategy, the sentry, the shield that it provides the units, the anti-range attack, uh, is more beneficial, right, in the beginning of the game, and not so much later in the game. And so I didn't go, even though the opponent is one of the opponents is Protoss, I did not go for Immortals. Again, because I knew that he was going for carriers, more air units than stalkers. But uh, I don't know. It's about 50-50, right? That the opponent might go mass stalkers or go air. Um, so we're gonna have our first big battle in a bit. And you're gonna see that the Templars were really like instrumental in having success in that confrontation with the opponent. So yeah, normally the average of bases that I build is about three. Sometimes I'll go four. Um, not more rarely I'll go five. And then like rarely ever one, right? I mean, you can't do much with one base. And there I'm building pylons along the third base, so I can build the cannons in case the opponent does not go through the main path of the ramp. And so I'll have the way I have it set up is that I'll have the nexus on control one. I'll have other structures that are not the nexus on control two, and I'll have my non-spellcasters on control three, spellcasters on control four, like the Templars. So here's the first battle, really the defining battle for us, and it's the defining battle. And you see right there the Templars. They're doing spread damage all along the clumping of the aircraft, the carriers and Tempest. And so that was a fairly easy win. Here again, Templars are effective against the Marines, the tanks, and just Templars in general against these sort of types of units, with the probably exception of Stalkers. You'd want to go more Immortals against those type of units. So another thing that you can do, and I do, is that after the Templars gets all their energy gets depleted and used up in the psionic storm, you can use that synchronization ability, right? It gives that unit Arcan, because for them to recharge again, it takes a while, and oftentimes there's going to be subsequent battles right after, say, a big battle like the one that just happened. So synchronizing them is probably a more beneficial than waiting for them to be charged again. So as you can see, I think, yeah, the first big battle that we had, we basically came out victorious, and so now the opponent has a very hard time generating enough units to do a counterattack. Um, at this point, I think it's basically a win for us, right? Yay, Templars! So in the April 11th StarCraft match that I uploaded, I talked about the Oracle Rush, right? I mentioned that oftentimes it's good to have two or more oracles in case the opponent has a cannon or turret. In this match, you'll see that play into effect, right? So going back to like the beginning of the game here, so I know the opponent is Terran and Protoss, and so because Terran tend to be more of a problem than Protoss, I'll focus on training Templars as opposed to the Immortals for the countering Stalkers from the Protoss. But sometimes I like to see if which of the two players, whether Terran or the Protoss, is performing better, right? So I might actually um, do different from that generalization, right? Of Templar, more more focused on Templar than the Immortal, based on race. So again, building the Stargate, not the Stargate, the Gateway, and then the Cybernautics, and then after that the Stargate, but not the Robotic Bay just yet. And then the other thing with workers, because it's out of 16, sometimes it's beneficial to create some workers in between the creation, the building of the structures. Sometimes it's not; it just depends. In this case, in this match, I did build workers in between. And there's a Stargate again, similar to the match that was uploaded on April 11th. Right, the pylon to increase the food um, maximum, right, from whatever it was before to now 31. And again, it's because I'll be busy with the oracles, taking out the workers, the opponent workers, and I won't have time to go back to the base and create a pylon. Those few seconds actually do make a difference. And so I am making right now the first oracle. I'm using the energy boost, which basically makes that training go faster. And I built a sentry. I started doing this kind of recently, only because of I was being rushed, and so the sentry is a good. The shield that it provides is a good. Coupled with the stalkers, is a good counter to any to most rushes. So there's the Oracle again, and it's yeah. Ideally, the Protoss tend to be the workers from the Protoss race tend to be a lot weaker than those at the Terran. So it takes a little bit longer to take out the worker from the Terran as opposed to the Protoss, right? I just happened to come across the Terran worker first and not the Protoss worker, but here you can see I spotted the Protoss workers, and they're taken out much faster than the Terran worker. And then sometimes they'll yeah they'll catch on and they'll be thinking, time to build a turret, right, like right there. But take out the worker that's building the turret, take out the worker that's building the expansion. That delays their growth, and their counter. And so this opponent has a third base. Like I said last time, the oracles are good at scouting expansions. So I came across that expansion with the oracle that I was using to scout, and it's it's away from the main bases, right? So like I said, sometimes You'll find it in places where you don't expect them. This was, I guess, somewhat expected, but there's other places where there's less expectation. And so here's the, I think that's the third oracle. Um, you're gonna see in a bit that I combine all oracles I've made to take out the anti-aircraft. First the cannon, and then later on the turret. And in the meantime, I'm building my army, stalkers, one sentry, and then Templars. So the expansion gets built a little later, um, just because I want to focus on an army early on to counter and to then um, do a attack on the enemy. But you can see here that one of the opponents already has left, and very likely it's because of the Oracle Rush. I took out a lot of the workers basically, and it takes a while for them to get those workers back. So here it is, the cannons being taken out, right? So the opponent will usually build like one or two cannons, and when you have enough oracles, like three, that's then destroyed, and the workers are readily basically taken out. And then there's a turret here. If I was a little bit more careful, actually, I probably wouldn't have even lost that oracle. But you can see how that turret was uh, taken down, and then now the workers are being taken out. Yeah. And so I'll use the energy booster to make workers from both bases, the immediate expansion plus the original Nexus, just to get that 16 out of 16 on workers. And then now I have a somewhat of a sizable army with that sentry that's going to create help with the shield. And so I didn't do it this match, but in other matches, I think it's important to have already or to have some Templars to go along with that initial wave against the opponent's army. Because you'll see that without Templar, the Terrans tend to be really, really good at countering, especially with those tanks. And I've noticed also when there's a lot of tanks that are sieged, like more than four, Immortals tend to be really strong against or resistant to tanks. But even that strong barrier or armor they have is really no match for uh, an opponent that has more than four tanks sieged. Yeah, so yeah, see, so it's important to have a Templar against Terran. My stalkers, yeah, are now gone. But in this next wave, I do have a Templar. And so, because my emphasis is on the Templars, not the Immortals, I'm building more gateways so I can build um, Templars as well as Stalkers. And so that's my third expansion. I'll use my initial Nexus and my first expansion to then build workers for my third Nexus. Um, so I think you'll see here that even with one Templar, it's pretty effective. But because of the energy that it uses up, I believe it's 150 mana. It's good to have more than one Templar. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm building more Templars with, so I can do Psionic Storm more. Oh, and see here, like there's no anti-aircraft building, so the workers are, they're being taken out without any what is it, any destruction of the aircrafts. And so I'm just scouting the base to see what other units the opponent is going for. Sometimes they'll shift. Um, and so I'm scouting now and then the base around, seeing if they're building a different type of unit. So I can then shift as well and counter that type of unit. So here I have quite a bit of Templars. So I think four should do it, but since the first two waves, the first being the bigger wave, and then the second one being a much smaller wave, were less successful, I wanted to make sure, and so I made sure I had a lot more Templars this time. And so I'm just about ready, but then to go and send the third wave. But then I'm also thinking here, you know what? Sealots. Sealots would be good. Normally, I just do the Stalkers and the Templars. That's pretty good. But because I have a lot of minerals, and that's another thing with Protoss, oftentimes it's the Vespene gas that the player ends up having less of than the minerals. And so to use up the minerals, Sealots is a good way because it only costs minerals and no gas. And so there I'm building other pylons along the base for the cannons, although I don't need them for this match. This is the last wave, and you'll see that basically the Templars were very, very good at taking out the Marines and then the tanks. And here comes the Sealots, which I then use to push further into the opponent's base. And I have the Templars in the back just in case. But the Sealots pretty much have it here because they're pretty good against the Valkar in ground mode. And so the opponent's gonna, well, I mean, there isn't really, there you go. So I picked Night Elf for this match, just because I'm more familiar with that race, but also because they tend to have a higher win rate than the other races. So I went ahead and put the wisps into the gold mine. I used to do what some people do, and that's like have a wisp build the altar, have another one build the moon well, and then the remaining three send them to the gold mine. In the long run, or in the immediate short run, it's not good because then you don't bring out other units that you would have brought otherwise. And so this next wisp that's gonna come out, I'll have that wisp get me one set of lumber before I go ahead and build the Ancient of War. It's just an extra. The timing coincides with the Moonwell and the whole production. It's just an extra 5 lumber. And so the remaining wisp will be going to the trees. And so I put around 5 or 6, or until the food capacity is 16 out of 20. Those four remaining, uh, I guess, slots or unit slots, those will go for the training of archers. Archers take up 2 unit slots, so I can make 2 archers before I go on and do some other stuff. And another structure that for a while I wouldn't build just because I was focusing on unit production was the item shop. Um, some of the items there might not be as good, and so I would focus on the unit production. But the mana, though, the mana potion that gives mana to the hero over time is actually pretty good. I know some other races have different items in their item shop, but that potion that Night Elves have in their item shop is really good, especially for like a hero like Keeper. Without that item potion or that potion, um, I wouldn't be able to do both of the casting later on, the entanglement and then uh, the the forest conversion into unit. And so here I am building archers, but also creeping. Um, the ability to make forest units from the trees is helps with the creeping. And I go for the green dots, right? Those are creeps or neutral here units that are easier to take down. Sometimes I'll go for an orange spot, which are moderately difficulty compared to the red spots. I hardly ever do the red spots unless it's like late in the game and I have stronger units. So I just use the potion, a mana potion that recovers mana over time. And that also helps. I know I have my moon wheels there. I know some people like to use their moon wheel to recover the hero's mana, but um, the potion mana potion helps those moon wheels not be depleted as fast. And I'll build some hunts, like 2 or 3, before I start building the ballistas. The ballistas are important because it helps take down buildings of the opponents when, um, like me and my ally are at their base, right? So the ballistas can concentrate on certain buildings like the altar while the combat is taking place. And here's another set of the forest conversion into trents. And yeah, they're pretty good. They have a pretty solid armor, and so they'll take pretty good hits. Yeah, it's important to keep building moonwells throughout. So um, I have all my wisps on control 4, so I just tap the 4 twice, and it takes me already to the base and selection of the wisps, and I just hotkey the buttons B and M, B for build and M for moonwell, and it just takes like what 2 seconds, and then I'm back shifting back to the combat scene. So here's where the ballistas would have come in handy, right? So sometimes I wait a little bit longer, sometimes before I build them, sometimes I build them earlier, but here the ballistas could be just taking down that building the unit that builds structure for the dead while the combat's taking place. And for my third spell, I go Trent. In this match, I went Entanglement just because it also helps with having the heroes stay in their spot, because once they have low health, they'll be running away, and Entanglement prevents them from getting away. So a lot of night elves, including myself, will go with quite a bit of number of archers. So it's always good to have some meaty units, right? So later on, I go on and build giants. Giants are really good combination with archers. And so it's important to keep on creeping, if not expanding. And so and then the increase upgrade of the attack of the units is important. I focus on the attack, not so much on the armor, just because I'll have more archers than say giants. Giants are kind of like the tank, but then again, the armor could come in handy, but it depends on what's happening in the match. In this match, it was much more I guess it was better to just go with the attack of the archers and less so with the upgrade of the armor of the giants. And here I'm looking for an expansion. Um, since we kind of somewhat of a stalemate at the opponent's base earlier, although we did have it's more of a little like a minor win kind of thing, because a lot of his units were killed, right? And but we retreated, but still we killed a lot of his units. So it's safe to go for an expansion. They're not going to be searching, likely unlikely that they'll be searching for an expansion. They'll be trying to recover those units they lost. And so yeah, I'll build my expansion after the first combat with the opponent, and in that combat will determine, right, if whether I will go for the expansion or not. If we don't do as good, I might refrain from going from expansion and wait a little bit longer until there is another gameplay that gives us leverage over the opponent. And sometimes I'll just take a little bit of risk and just go for the expansion anyway. And so, yeah, it's important to take down the expansions of the opponent, especially when yours is just being built, right, and they've had it for maybe a little longer, right? And so the humans, they tend to build expansions faster just because you can have multiple workers build that that structure that they can get the gold from the nearby gold mine. I don't think any of the other races can do that. They're just whatever the time frame is to build that structures for their respective races. And so here's the ballista doing some damage. The thing in this match, the opponent came from behind, and that normally doesn't happen. And if they do, I usually have like a good view of of that happening, and so I'll move the ballista. And my teammate ended up focusing their attack on the hero, which was good in this case. One of the heroes was taken down. In other cases, it's not good, especially with like say the dead, because they'll just heal that hero, and oh, that focus fire has kind of not entirely been a waste, but like other units of the opponents have been attacking other characters, and so it weakens your army, or some of your units get killed, and then now you have a hero that has practically a majority of their health back. So not necessarily the the best strategy, but it can work sometimes. I think it depends on the hero selection of the opponent, and then the race that the opponent's playing. Undead being the more difficult to take down because of the ability that the Death Knight has. And so yeah, we've taken down we're taking down the expansion, while my teammate and I now have an expansion, so that gives us a good position into the match to then defeat the opponents. Yeah. And so here, I know some people like to go for 3 heroes like swiftly, but I go for 2 on average. Sometimes I'll go for 3, just because there's a lot of unit production and structures to build on tier 2. Tier 3 would, for night elves, right, would be the Chimera being one of them, and the Chimeras are costly, and they're not. They don't give much gain for the cost, right? And so I'll just refrain from going to tier 3, because even though you could get an extra hero, those units that you can produce for, say, the Night Elf race are not as good as tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 because they're relatively cheap, and tier 2 because you get stronger units like the Giant. And so here I'm building more giants and another structure, Ancient of War, so I can build more archers. Because if you see the composition of the army that we are sending, there isn't really any tanks, right? Other than the giant, my teammate ended up going for air, which would be what, right, susceptible for with rifles. Riflemen can take down air pretty good, right? And so while the opponent is focusing on my base, I have a giant there that's taking all the hits and just healing him with Moonwell. We are taking down the structures from the opponent. And so I ended up building an additional Ancient of War. So it'd be 3 Ancient of Wars to get more archers out. And here the giants, you can see they take up the most of the hits from all the other riflemen, while the hippo riders, right, they're not being hit really, because the riflemen are focusing on the giants. So that countering anti-air unit, the riflemen aren't doing what their strongest at, right, and taking down those air units. And the trends are always a good thing to have. They provide extra tank, right? So we have the giant, now we have more trends, and that is more than enough tank for the army. Yeah, and the nice thing about having those potions that give mana over time is that the trend ability can be used more times than otherwise. So here my teammate kind of went away for a bit. I was busy building units and did not notice that right away. But yeah, it's good to pay attention what your teammate's doing. Oftentimes they won't communicate, but watching their actions gives you a hint of what you might want to do. But he comes back, right? And so I come back. I decide not to leave after all because he came back into the opponent's base to finish him off. And so the opponent's teammate is gonna try to make a last final comeback or counter. You can see he brought some units, a decent amount of units. But again, having all those like the tanks and then the range attack from the archers, right, are gonna be helpful here. And so pretty much the the opponent's army that he took, he teleported into his teammate, wasn't able to counter, and after that, it's pretty much a win. Hope you like it. Bye. Sometimes you'll have humans, the human race build not militia, footmen, and those can be easily countered with trends. So I'm also building the Ancient of War for archers. So the progression is that I do archers, then hunts, and then later talon. So if you press the lettering that's not the apostrophe, but it's the same key, it'll give you the wisp that's not working, and that's like an easy kind of shortcut to select the wisps that are done building, say, a moonwell or a building. And so the Ancient of War is almost completed, and I'll be training my first archer, because I have 4 like slots for the units. I'll build 2 archers, or I'll train 2 archers before before I do the next thing, which is the hunts. Yeah, you can't forget the item shop. The item shop is very important for a hero like the Keeper. His 2 abilities, the Entanglement and the Trent, um, can be, the mana exhaustion is just not there if you have the mana potion, the potion that recovers mana over time. It's not really good for the Demon Hunter. Mana burn and then the miss attack, right? You won't really run out of mana with using mana burn. The other ability that the Demon Hunter has is Immolation. But since you'll be around units, the potion of mana isn't going to be useful because one hit to the hero and it undoes the item effects. And so here I am trying. This is another thing that happens quite often when there's an orc player. They will choose a Blade Master and they'll rush. So it's good to have like Trents or archers early on. Preferably hunts, but those take a little bit longer to build. But having a good number of archers with the Trents being the tank and taking up most of the damage, is a good counter or a good substitute for the not having hunts. And so you can see that I'm running out of mana with the hero because I'm near the base. It's not so important that I have the potion that recovers mana because of the moonwells, right? Later on, I will buy some items that recover mana over time because I'll be out more of away from the base. And then there's the upgrade from the tree, the main base structure, where you can upgrade so that units can carry items. And so what I do sometimes, I'll have some units carry some of the items to where I'm at, where the hero is at. If the hero is creeping quite a distance from the main base. And the other nice thing about night elves in general is that they can go, they can use the night, date or nighttime to go invisible. And you can see that when I do go invisible with the archers, the opponent stops basically harassing or and so now that I can build hunts, I'll build some hunts and then ballistas for the structures of the opponent. And so there I am buying the potion that gives mana, as well as the item that makes it nighttime for Moonwell recovery of, I guess, the elixir, right? That's in the Moonwells that recovers instant life and mana. And then I'll debate whether to go for expansion or not, depending how my teammate and myself are doing in this match. Well, so far, my teammate seems to need some help, and I thought I first harass the opponent before I go on and build an expansion. Yeah, well, it turns out that my ally or teammate was able to have control over the opponent that was attacking his base, but I didn't think that building an expansion was safe enough in case that he's not able to counter the opponent. I'd be there to help him. And that is one thing with the orgs, the hero, the hexes. If a strong unit gets trained like a giant, a quick hex kind of makes that strong unit kind of unusable for a while. It doesn't have too much effect if it's like a hunt. Because like giants take up 7 unit food, right? And the hunts only take up 3. And so like the other thing is to be careful with the creeps, because sometimes what will happen is that you'll one of your units will venture into the creep area, and then now you have what you just saw, which is combat at 2 different locations, the opponent and the creeps attacking your army. Yeah, the nice thing about Entangle is that you can, you saw that hero that was trying to escape. It renders them immobile, so therefore they can, when they're in low health, they'll try to run, but they won't be able with Entangle, and then you can kill off the hero. And here, again, although it might not be enough, yeah. And so the other thing is to go for a second hero. Um, I like to go for priestess just because it gives that extra attack power, right? Um, Another hero that I like very much is the warden because of its the ability that does initial damage and then damage over time. The fan not so much just because it's very costly, and then the blink just to escape. And so there's a unit in this item shop. That one right there can give you lumber rather quickly, and so you won't need as many wisps uh, to get the high amount number needed for things like building some of the units that require a lot of lumber. Here, there's the building for the talons. Um, in a little bit, I'll be having some druid talons. And here again, the tanglement, right? Very, very helpful to take down the hero that was trying to escape. And so the Blade Master is not so good as much as good later in the game. Its initial first, I'd say the first three or four levels is where his most effectiveness is at, because of the invisibility, right? That's one of the abilities it has, but later on, not so much because that invisibility kind of doesn't do much with like a big army that's really strong. There's the first Talon, and another Talon. So the Talons are pretty good because they reduce the armor of the opponent. But if the opponent were to have like anti magic, like say Dryads, I don't, I'm against Orc right on the top, so that's not a problem. Disenchant is something that they could use, but building that kind of unit is not as good as say building a Dryad, because Dryad has both functionality, attacking, and dispelling. Whereas this enchant unit that orcs have, they do dispel mostly. I mean, there is the other thing about reviving Tauren, but for that there's a lot of high upkeep or upgrade of the structures, for one to get that. And so it's important to keep the food production or the moonwell production for the night elf, and for the orc would be the burrows and so forth. It's good to keep on building those because, as you just noticed, it's kind of slowed down a little bit the production of unit. But so always keep in mind of that. Be mindful of that. Um, and here's the entanglement being used well again. You see, I almost took down the hero. Um, the other thing about the Druid of Talon is that when you cast that ability on an opponent, you're able to see, their view of range. Um, so like right now, if I really like see, I can see different parts of the base of the opponent because of the the spell that was cast by the Druid of Talon. And the opponent is going for the my teammate is going for the expansion. Um, if that's the case, I'll kind of hold out and me going for the expansion. Um, Sometimes I'll go for an expansion and my teammate, but that's sometimes a little bit too much to protect, right? So either or. Um, if we really need it, though, of course, the expansion. I'll build the expansion, but it seems here in this match, right? We don't both need to go for expansion. And so the Taurens are a pretty tanky unit, but with the Druid of Talon, that makes their armor, reduces their armor, which weakens them and makes them less tanky, less of a tank. Um, See right there that this enchant that unit used, that's for the spelling, and that's what I was talking about earlier. Um, Not as good as there was Dryads because, like I said, they have two purposes. With this, see how they're just standing there. The units, I mean, because that's all they do. Just this dispel. And so I tend to focus on archers later in the game just because they have a wide range of or a larger range than other units. And then the ballistas, they're more what is it useful in the beginning. Later on, not so much. So you can see that I stopped building them, and so I'm, because they they don't serve a whole bunch of their usefulness later on because of the bigger armies um, that clash, and they're so weak they can easily be destroyed. And they're not so cheap, right? They're like a little bit more costly than a hunt. And so I got more Ancient of Wars. I built an extra one. So that's two Ancient of Wars, so I can build more archers. And here, there's another battle here. See how he has a lot of those disenchanting, but they're just they're just standing there. Um, there is that other thing that they do, which is the spread of damage. Not so effective because it's not preventing damage, although it does help a bit because it spreads the damage with with other units. And so here I am healing my heroes because um, taking down a white unit hero that gets taken down, it really lowers the effectiveness of the army that you have. Um, so here my ally or teammate needs assistance with expansion. And so I'm also upgrading the range of the archers so they can have a bigger range already. I like them very much because of the range they have, but upgrading that extra range is um, even more so helpful.